We are at 6:30, so I think I will call this work session into order. We have some board and commission interviews. Thank you all who are here to interview and are willing to serve the city on boards and commissions. We're going to start with Andrew Clapper, who is interviewing for the Parks and Recreation Commission. Thanks. I know you're at work. Thank you for taking time out to join us this evening. And really all we're going to ask you to do is talk about why you applied to serve the city and what skills you think you might bring to the job. So the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm glad we had a good sound check earlier. And thank you everyone for your flexibility. I know that's, I'm working tonight. And so I really appreciate that I'm able to do the interview in this format. So my name is Andrew Clapper. My wife and I own 2 houses in Webster Groves. And I was recently promoted to being a dad. So we share, my wife and I have a 9-month-old daughter named Mavis. So I've gotten a lot more used to the parks in Webster and really have appreciated them in a whole new light since we had our daughter. She's, starting to get used to the swings and the slides. So on the slides so far. A little bit about my background. I work at NGA here in St. Louis as an orbit scientist. I'm also a Navy reservist. My wife and I have lived all over, and we've always been huge park users wherever we have lived. Everything from when we lived in Colorado to mountain biking on a really large park near us to when we lived in San Diego using small parks that, just had little playgrounds and stuff like that. We're avid users of Larson and Barber and Blackburn parks here in Webster, and we're both really interested in how parks and green spaces improve and allow communities to connect. A little bit more about my background. I have a master's in engineering, and I have served in volunteer capacities at several military bases. I've run several volunteer type runs and other volunteer sporting events before. And so, yeah, I'm really interested in serving Webster and helping residents and others get more use out of the recreational facilities that Webster has to offer in addition to the parks. So yeah, I will cut myself off there if anyone has any questions or wants me to talk about anything else.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Does anyone have questions?
I have none.
No, thank you.
Oh, that was great.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
applying. Yeah.
This is not an appropriate question for this forum, but at some point I want to hear what an orbit scientist does. And just
I'm happy to answer that.
Okay. Just so you two know, we're going to go to Mr. Meehan second. Meehan, Dan. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you. Just so you two know, there are 2 open positions, so don't think of this as competition. So please, Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Nice to see you guys. You're really small in my picture, but it's good to see you. I'm on the road to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I'm almost there. So I'm Dan Meehan, and my wife and my kids, we live at 636 Lockwood Court. So it's a Webster Hills neighborhood right over there by Mary Queen of Peace. We've been residents for 15 years. Our 4 boys, we have a junior in college, a junior in high school, a sophomore in high school, and our youngest is a 5th grader at Bristol. So it'll be our 16th consecutive year at Bristol this coming year. We've enjoyed the parks. We've played lots of sports. My career has been retail and wholesale industry. The last 15 plus years, I've been in the outdoor industry. So focused on outdoor clothing and camping equipment, things like that. So it's been a good fit for me. I grew up doing outdoor activities with our family. So we not only played sports, but we were into climbing, caving, canoeing, camping, that sort of thing. So it's been a great fit for me. I think I'm most interested in it. I'm just interested in serving the community, but I spend a lot of time in the parks. Currently, I coach baseball in the Webster Groves Baseball Softball League. So I'm there a couple times a week for that. I also am an assistant coach on the CYC League. So even more time spent in our parks. So whether people are, walking their dog, playing sports, going to the pool, going to the ice rink, it's a great community and hope to keep it that way.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Does anyone have questions for Dan?
Thank you for applying.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you both for applying and Zooming with us today. You are welcome to stay on the meeting, but it sounds like you both have other things that might occupy your time this evening. So thanks for joining us, and we'll move to the people in the room now, I think, right? That's all our Zoom. Okay, so we are going to go next to the library board. Angelo Austin, please come on forward. You've heard what the questions are, I think, already. So please.
Thank you. Thank you for the pleasure for coming to apply. My name is Angelo Austin. I've lived in Webster Groves for a decade now. I have 2 children, 12 and 10, and my fiance here all live on Atalanta, just down the road. I am a certified internal auditor who's been working in St. Louis region for 12 years now, from big corporations to littler ones, Express Scripts. I'm currently at Centene. So I've had the privilege of working with boards in that capacity as a director of internal audit, reporting to the audit committee. So going through and looking at some of the documentation around the library board, I got familiar with that. And so I believe that'll be a good fit there. But found this opportunity interesting because I wanted to give back. And I know that's kind of a common theme here, all in public service here. Recently had the privilege of serving as the chair of the Northside Community School annual gala, which was like their main gala for the year. Was a really great experience, success for them, but really for me, sparked the bug again. Volunteered as a child, but now I'm teaching my children on how to give back, but I need to do it myself. So saw this as a great opportunity. The library, love reading. A lot of people like reading, so that's not the only thing, but I also love what it brings to the community. It's the point of access for people that don't have that access. Internet's first started in libraries. It also brings that equity and equality for people that don't have that just readily available. I would love to continue and give back in that manner, and that's what really piqued my interest. In addition to that, I also think I'm in a place in life where I can, I'm part of that crossover generation, pre-internet, post-internet, but I'm right in the middle. And so I feel like I do bring some of that experience to say, I know how to use a rotary phone, but I also know how to, I also work in IT now. So anyway, those are just some of the reasons why I found this very interesting, and I'll open it to the council for any questions.
Great. Any questions here for Angela?
I have one.
Yeah.
Are you going to be disappointed that the library does not currently have a gala?
Well,
Wait, you
maybe I can
plan
change
one.
that. I mean,
I'm just-
I got some really good experience planning galas now. So if that's something that wants to happen, we can sure make a try for it.
Very nice. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate having you, and you'll hear from us soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, you have been waiting patiently. Please come join us as we talk about the old Webster Special Business
excited.
District.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your time. So I did pass out my bio to you all, if you want a little extra info. I'm not super chatty, but I'll give you a little bit of background on me. I actually grew up in Webster Groves, grew up on Gore Avenue, spent my whole life there. My wife and I, when we got married, we lived out of town for a while, but I have a background in engineering. I currently run a CPA firm in the old Webster Business District, actually right by Jet's Pizza. Had the opportunity to relocate, and we've been in that district for 3 years. So it's actually pretty awesome. Selfishly, I got one of the best commutes in town. I got a 2-block walk because I live down on Gray Avenue. So Webster resident, love it. So why am I here? My buddy Ron Cliff, who runs the hub, he twisted my arm and said, get on this. But the reality is I get involved in a lot of boards in various activities. It just so happens that my board involvement is fairly light at the moment. So I got a little bit of capacity. Not surprisingly, most of my involvement is in a financial capacity because we're looking at financial statements and dealing with all that on a pretty regular basis. So I'm actually kind of excited about having the opportunity to help out and give some guidance on spending money to better improve the business districts.
Great, thank you.
Questions?
Any questions? I just have one comment.
Yeah.
You got 2 Big Ten schools on that resume.
Oh.
Wrong ones. I have 2 Big Ten schools in my resume too, so we're covering most of it between.
But there we go.
I have one big.
Yeah,
Ten.
there we
Yeah,
go.
so
That's
that's,
a
so that's
different one.
4 Big Ten, 5 Big Tens. So that
Can
makes
we get
only
any-
7 more that aren't covered in the.
Yeah,
Big Ten.
we got to work on that. All right. Well, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
David.
Appreciate it. And yes, you're welcome to stay. Don't feel obligated that you need to.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know why I'm closing this as if our job is all finished. We still have things to do. How about, does anyone have anything they'd like to review on the regular agenda? I know, Emerson, you're going to take one thing out of the consent agenda, I believe.
Yes, I'd like to take resolution 2022-22.
Okay,
And so it'd be a separate vote.
okay, we will do that. And if I fail to remember, feel free to just remind me, but I did write a note on that, so we will do that. Anything else? No? All right. How about issues and updates? Let's do this very differently and start with Dr. Peoples today.
That's going to be fast. I suspect after council's discussions tonight, I'll have all kinds of updates and work product to do. So
Yeah, right.
nothing for now. Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Similarly, nothing.
We're just going to go right on around.
I have a very small update from the Old Orchard Business District, and that is that the Novel Neighbor is going to be doing their Where's Waldo scavenger hunt again in July, and you can pick up your directions for that at the bookstore or any of the participating businesses or locations, of which I believe City Hall is one. So it's an exciting, scavenger hunt in July in Webster.
Excellent.
Just one, Mayor, just to remind everybody that the trivia night for the Webster Rock Hill Ministries is this Friday night. Would appreciate your attendance and your support. And I have no other updates. Good thing is both of my liaison positions, they meet on the same day.
Yes, that's fun. isn't it?
Yeah. that's
You're welcome.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dan.
Yes, Business Development Commission had a special meeting last week, and the purpose was to review the business survey that was online, as well as the notes from the Business Roundtable that they held in November. And the purpose of the meeting was to prioritize basically concepts or projects that they would like to continue the next year or more. And so they picked the 3 top common themes were staffing, walkability among all the business districts, ways to connect the business districts physically and virtually to make them a little bit more cohesive, and business planning. So those were common themes, and then we're going to continue with that. The regular meeting is this week. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. David,
Nothing there.
did traffic advisory not meet?
We did, I missed it because I was not on the email chain.
Oh,
Now I know.
okay. All right. We got that one now fixed.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't know what they did, if anyone knows.
Well, Emily, do you know what traffic advisory?
I do not know.
You can share what you
But I
know.
do have my own update.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I
So,
think the minutes were in the packet. from the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
So I went to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting last week and got up to date on the projects that they're working on. And there was a lot of great discussion on themes that we've talked about too, like protecting smaller homes and kind of that pull between like what we as a community or city might want to do and private property rights and what community can do as opposed to what the city its proper would need to do. But they're working on 2 cool projects with Joy Built Homes and Lustron Homes. They're going to prioritize the Lustron project. And then they're working on more communication to the community about historic preservation and awareness of things that might be available to them. So that was a good meeting. And then last Thursday, Friday, I got to go to the Missouri Municipal League training in
Right.
Columbia and learn from all sorts of lawyers.
Lucky you.
I know. It was funny. It was like lawyer after lawyer. And then the keynote speaker was like, oh, okay, so it's going to be not a lawyer. And she's like, I am a recovering lawyer. It's like, but they were all good and engaging and learned lots about sunshine law and the advice to always check with your own city attorney. And so, but it was good to go
Good.
there and
That's
nice drive
great.
back and forth.
Excellent.
Yeah. Katie, anything for you?
I do have just one thing, for the
What?
council, look for the parade information, your lineup spot shortly, as soon as Scott boards it, so.
Okay,
you'll be all set.
great. Mr. Peterson.
Feeling good.
Yeah. I just have one this week is Mayors for Meals, and we have a collection item, a collection container right here in City Hall inside the front door. And then there's also one at the Recreation Center. So this is throughout the St. Louis area, mayors are doing this. So please, if you're here again soon, drop off some non-perishable items for us. And just so you know, the organization collecting is one of the organizations that our local food pantry at Webster Rock Hill Ministry works with. So it indirectly will stay in the community.
What's the ending date for that?
It's Friday.
And where's the collection point?
There's one just inside the doors of the Recreation Center. And then as you come in City Hall front door to your right, you'll find one.
It's a competition, right?
It is not, but maybe I should make it one.
Oh, I thought it was like a competition amongst mayors. or
Well, you
towns.
know what, maybe given who I am, maybe I'll suggest that for next year. Hey Karen, how are you? I'm gonna just stall for a few seconds so Councilmember Alexander can sit down before I ask her if she has any updates.
I have no updates. Thank you.
There we go. That worked out well. Okay, great. Well, we have two topics today. Now that we have, or today, we hope we will finish the fiscal year 2023 budget. So we now need to think about what we're going to do next, because we have essentially fully invested our time in the budget, or almost fully invested our time in the budget. And so we need to think both how we're going to operate and what we're going to work on. You got a memo from me. So it just for the public to know, after the election, I met with all of the council members to talk about council procedure as well as the things that council wanted to work on. And so we have council received two memos from me. One is sort of outlining some of the issues about procedure. The other was simply a list of the items that had come up. And I know in those conversations, and I know by now we probably have a few that we want to add to that list as well. So I want to start with this memo on procedure, because we're going to do things pretty similar to the way we've always done them. But one of the things that came up repeatedly was that how things got on the work session agenda was kind of a mystery. And what might be the criteria for us putting something on the work session agenda. And so, you know, one question is there a more formal process needed? Do we want to have a little form that you as a council member send out to all of us saying, I want to put this on the agenda? The second question really is, how many people do we need to really want this on the agenda for it to be scheduled? Or is one person saying, I want to do this enough to set the agenda? And then I'm going to skip the how can we better utilize the calendar, because Dr. Peoples has started sharing with us the work session calendar periodically. So I think we're going to be better informed about how that plays out from week to week to week. So that's my opening salvo, and talk to me a little bit about what your feelings are in terms of putting things on the agenda.
Well, I think it's important to be able to listen and consider any subject that a council person might want to have. But they should be able to bring what the item is, the importance of it, the impact, and what positive effects they can have. I like to hear it at least, and then we can decide where it falls on the agenda or if we listen to it at all.
Okay.
Yeah,
Other
I kind of like
comments?
that idea. Like being able to have kind of an introductory time slot where you say like, this is something that I would like to talk about in work sessions in general, and explain kind of why. So we can do that in the meeting and it's public and we're talking about it, as opposed to trying to do it, you know, not in the meeting. And then we can kind of decide as a group. I don't know how many that is, like if we want to
Okay.
keep it, is this something we want to pursue as a council or look at more, or is we want to do it and take it offline?
I mean, I'm kind of assuming that we're not going to be springing this idea, in the middle of a work session, that we would
Yeah.
have a preliminary
Yeah.
conversation with Laura or
yeah,
Dr. Peoples.
So typically, the way this has happened is during issues and updates, if you have a new thing that you want scheduled in the work session, you bring it up during your issues and updates. If that's satisfactory, we can keep doing it that way. There was some discussion about wanting a more formal process. I honestly personally care.
So that when we bring it up in issues and updates, then, I mean, we're almost listing items that are proposed to be on the agenda.
Correct.
And then there has to be some type of protocol or whatever as to when those go on and what, because to Pam's point, sort of, we got an idea. Well, okay, when does it go on the agenda?
Yeah.
How many things are already going on the agenda? What type of timeline do we have? That I think there has to be some type of order or organization in terms of how that goes once we bring it up.
Okay, so then I think it sounds like the consensus is it's okay to do it. You want to hear it. And then we're going to make a decision rule about whether it gets scheduled or not.
And it'd be helpful, like I say, for the individual that's presenting it, to have some basic information they can share. I want to do this. I want this to be discussed because this is an impact on something. Yes, so we just not want to talk about this. I think some detail need to come behind it. Then, it could be that everybody agreed to listen to it, but then we need to agree when it should fall on the agenda. It might,
Okay.
based on what's on queue already, it might be another month, it might be another 2 months.
So, but what's the decision rule here? If I bring an issue forward and I say, I want to talk about, can't even think of what I want to talk about, but some issue, and I'm the only one who wants to talk about it, does that mean we schedule it? Or does it have to be 2 members or should it be 3 members?
You're the mayor.
Oh, that's a card for me to play later.
No, I'm saying if I have something I want to bring to the council, I should have enough information for council to bite into it, to understand where I'm trying to go.
Right, but maybe council doesn't care about that issue.
Could be.
I was gonna say, just in my experience so far, I'm sorry. Well, it might have been delayed as to when it goes on the agenda, the work session agenda. I feel like anything that anyone's ever brought up during work session has eventually made it onto work session agenda.
Okay.
Am I missing anything? If there hasn't been, I think now's the time to state that, because in my mind, if a council member has an item that they want discussed, regardless of the number of other council members, I think that their vote or their recommendation to have that work session item should be given just as much weight as someone who has 7 votes on this council for work session.
Okay.
Yeah, at least so that there ends up being a formal conversation about it. Now, if once that conversation occurs, then
And
we
nothing,
determine, hey, David, you're nuts. We
Yeah,
can talk about
exactly.
that.
Okay.
Exactly.
So let's.
Yeah,
go
so
ahead,
if you bring up something in the issues and updates, this is what I would thinking about talking about at the work session. Do we decide then like what the priority is, or do
Yeah, then we would have that discussion.
right at that?
And I think, remember that we're talking about essentially 2 tracks on the work session. The things that we want to consider in terms of policy and the things that staff bring to us that have to be addressed based on timing and things like that. So we are never going to have complete control over when things are considered because there are things that come up that just need our attention.
Mhm.
But we can then, yeah, okay. So I get this. Okay. I think I'm clear on this. Sarah, did you want to say something?
Just to say that maybe during that, whatever that kind of period is, whether we call it issues and updates or it's that separate thing, just to talk about upcoming work sessions, maybe it'd be helpful to be able to review the calendar to see what's coming up next.
Yeah,
At least it's on the calendar already, because as a group, I don't know that we ever really.
That we're taking into context what we're already talking about or what's coming up, so that we're not 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll have to think about, I'd like to think about and talk with Dr. Peoples about reviewing the calendar. I worry about 10 of us trying to review the calendar and make it work all at once. But if the council sets a priority, then we can follow up and move things around to fit that. But I do think we should, you're right, in terms of reviewing the calendar and making sure we know what's on there and maybe saying, somebody may say, well, I wanted this on there, but it can wait. Something like that.
Or
That
whenever
makes sense.
this comes up, can we add this to that conversation?
Yeah, okay. Second thing on this list then is that the request was for a 6:30 hard start time, which we have done since that request was made. I just put it on here for a couple of reasons. One is if we're always going to start at 6:30, as we have learned through this budget process, sometimes we're going to go late and they're not great alternatives to that. And so I think we also have to be mindful of what that means for staff as well. And I don't know that that's a question. It's just, can we please remember that if we're going to go that route? The second thing that came up is the first bullet point there is to try and figure out a way so that we spend one meeting in longer period of time in work sessions, and we spend one meeting in longer periods of times with public hearings and things like that. There's a lot of head nodding going on.
I like
there.
that a lot.
Okay. Well, then how about so that will actually require an ordinance change because we start our regular meeting at 7:30 by ordinance. So how about if I work with Dr. Peoples and with our wonderful city clerk, and we will sort out what that looks like in terms of changing the ordinance so that we can do that scheduling. And it may take us a little while to figure out how we're going to do it
I think
best.
allowing some type of flexibility
Yeah.
in it, in the ordinance that's drafted will.
Because it seems like if we really are in a way shortening the time because sometimes we do start an hour earlier or an hour and a half earlier than 6:30. So
Well,
I would
especially
think
for
right,
work sessions, I was going to say.
correct.
Yeah.
And so it seems like we have a responsibility to perhaps be a little bit more efficient in our conversations and et cetera, and prepared, et cetera. If we're going to shorten the time, right, no matter what, whether it's a plan to shorten time or not, it's just, we're going to shorten the time. I just want to be realistic.
We just need to be
With it.
cognizant of the public hearings that need to be scheduled out in
Yeah.
advance and things like that. Set times for someone coming in to receive a proclamation. So as long as we know ahead of time.
And Pam, I think you said the magic word is being prepared. If it's something we're going to discuss on in the work session, if we have information, we need to read it, understand it, and hopefully go
Right.
straight into the conversation instead of starting from the beginning.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden we're running late for time and then, let's hold it off to next week, let's hold it off to next meeting, that kind of stuff.
But just a reminder, you only have to have one meeting, one actual meeting a month. You could have another meeting that is just a work session. I mean, obviously you can balance those two things, but by charter, you're only required to have one meeting per month.
You mean one work session?
No, one
Council
meeting,
meeting.
one business meeting, right?
You know, something else to think about, just tell that on Neil. Maybe might have an extra work session once a quarter, just to bring information out on some of the items that's on our list.
Just to kind of get caught
Caught
up
up.
or move ahead.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we, I was going to say, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say, I have no problem doing that. I'm just concerned about staff time and the burdens that we're already placing on them. That would require them to be here for a work session in the evening. So just keeping that in mind, I think that in some instances it makes sense to do it, but I like the idea of if we can narrow, obviously in some things we have to have 2 meetings a month, but if we can narrow our meetings to 1 meeting a month and then a work session for multiple hours during that second meeting, I think we can get a lot accomplished.
All right, so we'll work on the logistics of that
Mhm.
and see if we can sort out how that might work.
And is that something that so Katie, I think you just said that there was some flexibility in how we do the scheduling, and Neil just said we're only really by ordinance required to have one,
Charter.
by
requires
charter,
one.
required to have one council meeting. And so I just want to, just thinking in terms of perception from the community if we're having fewer council meetings, or are we not, engaging or?
Right. And I don't think anybody's talking about fewer meetings. It's just, we're talking about how we order the work sessions relative to the regular meetings. And it's the regular meetings that the ordinance says should start at 7:30. So we need to make that more flexible for us. So if we wanted to do a meeting that was much longer in work session, start, say, the regular meeting at 8 or 8 o'clock.
And they're both open to the public. so
Right,
these
exactly.
still we're
Yeah.
just
Different types
changing
of
the
meetings,
substance.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because I think to myself, like some of the topics that I know are forthcoming, such as, the Charter Review Commission, housing, that kind of stuff's gonna take longer than an hour, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. And speaking of timing, I don't want to rush this, but we really probably, it's more important we talk about the priorities. Outside of meetings, you got a list of things, the use of subcommittees. We've already started that with the board and commission subcommittee, and you all are getting the notes from that subcommittee. Are we comfortable continuing down that process with, assigning subcommittees where we think there would be useful?
I say yes.
And one of the things that's nice is, yeah, we have asked the clerk's office for some staff support on that. But the subcommittee has been relatively autonomous. The one important thing I think under there is we may have subcommittees that are only 3 members, which is not a quorum. So technically they wouldn't have to be open meetings. Personally, I think that they should all be open meetings. I don't think subcommittees have to be Zoomed, but they do have, I think my preference, and if someone would prefer something else, just given how I think every single one of us campaigned on issues of transparency, and closing those out would not be transparent.
And really, depending upon the topic, you probably couldn't close them
Yeah.
out.
Okay.
So we really, under sunshine, we have to keep them open.
Okay.
And so
Great.
that transparency issue is a big deal.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I just wanted to step back because I got a text from Mara. And she said, just please consider about the 3rd readings, when someone has a hearing and then following that 2 weeks. So it could be just a brief meeting, maybe.
Right.
Something like that.
We could
Yeah.
create a hybrid where you would have a much longer work session and a
Yes.
very brief business meeting where you would devote it solely to things like 3rd reading.
Yes.
Sure.
And I think that's the goal.
Okay.
But if you all will let us work a little bit, we'll come back with a more formal
Absolutely.
presentation to you about that.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. Like, we don't want to hold up city business. So, we want to be more efficient all over. We just don't want to hold up things in the process.
The other thing that came up repeatedly in these meetings was we as a council, I think, have been very hesitant to have individual conversations with one another about issues, and, just the reminder that we're allowed to talk to each other. Neil, do you want to cover this for me? please?
Yeah, I do. So under sunshine, the idea here is that the business of the city should be done in a public forum so that the public can see what it is you're doing. However, it is silly to think that you cannot communicate with each other in order to prepare for those meetings. So if you're having conversations amongst each other, one-on-one or one with 2 or whatever it might be, that's absolutely allowed. If you are, however, devoting records and emails and things like that, that's where we run afoul of sunshine. Because if we're sending out information back and forth that we want people to consider when they're casting a vote, that sort of thing can run afoul of sunshine. All I say is when you're doing that, put Katie on there. Everything that you do then becomes transparent because we're archiving it within the city records. So again, you can communicate that way. But picking up the phone, calling, caucusing amongst yourselves about how you want to think about various issues, that's absolutely allowed. Okay, with the idea that you don't want to create a system where decisions are being made outside the vision of the public. As long as you're keeping that in mind, you'll be fine. It's a common sense approach.
The other thing that's listed, I've talked to everybody about it, and I hope that it's improved. I don't know the answer to that, just to continue to be very responsive when we're asked to schedule things, when we're asked for comment on things, so that we can keep things moving along. The 4th thing on there is a flow chart tracking. I'm going to ask that we postpone talking about that until we get our meetings organized. Because once we figure out what the meetings look like, it may be easier to figure out whether that's needed. Does anybody have an objection to that? All right. The last thing I want to have on there is I would like for us to change the remarks of visitors to remarks from the community and visitors. This is a community meeting. Just because people show up here, they live in our community, they get to talk here. So if any, that also, by the way, requires a change in ordinance, believe it or not. So does anyone object to that?
That's great.
That's good.
Okay.
The community's clapping.
Can I also say that I really appreciate that we're sharing all of this during the work session too, because there were days in the past where that would not have happened. And
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful if you're following along to be able to see what it is we're talking about, even in work session.
All right, so let's talk about the real thing that I think people are very interested in is what are we as a group going to focus on next? And so you have in front of you and now on the screen, this is the list of issues that came up in our conversations. The DH site planning is Douglas Hill site planning for anyone who might be reading along. There is one that Pam sort of alluded to it because find the right memo. The Business Development Fund is at this moment totally undefined. And at some point, we're going to have to also. So I just hand wrote that in for myself as well. All right. Who feels strongly about what we should talk about?
Can I ask first, some of these things are maybe already scheduled because of their.
Part of this is, all of those are priorities for people on this council. The question for me right now, or the question I'm asking, and I think the city manager would agree, we got to figure out, we can't do all of these at once.
Right.
In terms of staff time or in terms of work session time. So what are we going to say we want to work on as the first 2 or 3 things? We can put things behind that. It's just a question of how are we going to jump in?
Well, Laura, it's actually going back to your comment about your Gantt chart. That comes into play with this. All these items on here are, I think it's important. All we need to do is determine how many can we work on at one time. And this is the first 3 we'll work on: housing, strategic planning, Douglas Hill site planning. Those are the 3, and the rest of them go into a waiting queue. As we finish one, we can bring another one up. So we determine.
But the question is, what's the order going to be?
Yeah, that's just what they are. So I'm saying you're going to be able to answer 2 questions. Your Gantt chart, based on what we decide here, is what you will place the order.
Is the Charter Review Commission kind of already being underway as you all are talking about boards and commissions?
Yeah, and we're going to have to reserve, I think, 10 or 15 minutes today to talk about that so that our subcommittee can continue its work.
So to me, that would seem like a priority.
Yeah.
And that's the boards and commissions we already have a subcommittee for that. So I don't know
Yeah,
if they
that's
are,
kind of
but
what I was talking about. when I
is the
said-
idea like, do we want to have maybe like 3 subcommittees going at a time, 2 or 3 subcommittees on these topics?
I don't know that we need subcommittees. Some of these things we need
Full
staff
council,
support
staff
for
support, yeah.
too. And they need to have a heads up that this is what we'd like them to be working on right now.
And is this a final list?
No.
Okay, because I mean, I think that, and I don't know if this is in a more formal plan for the agenda, but I mean, I think revenue, we need to talk about revenue, how we plan to address the need to generate revenue for the city. And I know that we briefly talked about that when we were talking about the budget, and then that's going to be a future conversation, but I think it needs to be in the near future versus the far future. And I mean, and I think that also can kind of tie in with the, site planning. I just hate calling that thing Douglas Hill.
Me
but I-
too.
I
Yeah,
like that,
well.
but-
What would you like to call it?
I don't want to read out all the lot numbers either.
It's
Um,
Old Webster North, right? That's what we originally
Yeah.
called it. before,
Okay,
and
we'll
then
go back
they-
to Old Webster North then.
Okay. But I think that I would like to see revenue planning included in that list because, that's just something that we really need to focus on. And it could be incorporated with both, site planning and strategic planning. I mean, those are things that's in there, but it's just critical that we address that and how that might even, you know, and the comprehensive plan is all that's kind of wrapped up in there. So I just don't want to.
Can we add expenses to that as well? Revenue and expenses?
Well, expenses to me is when budgeting. We just got off of a whole budgeting,
Right,
focusing on
but
budget.
even if you can't create revenue,
Mhm.
you decrease your expenses and that will increase your revenue.
Well, it'll
But
decrease
I'm
your
talking
taxes.
about,
And keep in mind, we will have staff is committed to regular budgetary updates so that we really understand where we are. And I
Mhm.
assume that at a minimum, those will be quarterly.
Mhm.
So
because
that, but the revenue conversation is different than those updates.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, because where I'm talking about and is just really the need to start having that conversation with the city, you know, about what we intend to do to address how we potential
Yeah.
options about how we address revenue development, because, you know, you can't cut your way out of a hole. You know, and we've got, the city has historically, I think, had this bedroom mentality that we only want this and that, but we got to do something different. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect.
Is it fair to assume that that would be a big focus of our strategic planning as well, though? I guess, like, I feel like there are some of these that kind of combine together naturally.
That's
and,
why I said
like,
that could be I mean, between the site planning and strategic planning, that gets touched, but I just want to I'm very intentional
Yeah,
at saying that that is a critical place that we need to have a conversation about, and that we need to have discussions, you know, very transparently with the city and you know, what have you, on how we plan to address that going forward, because we've got to discuss opportunities to do something different.
yeah, I guess to me, a lot of that does come back to planning and zoning and things that I feel like are part of strategic planning. And so like, I think there's a couple different ways you look at revenue. There's taxation, right? Which I don't know if anybody's even actually considering. And there's developing what we have, like in terms of how we use our resources and our land. And so I guess like I would be interested in making that like a primary focus of strategic planning. I just feel like that's maybe like you've got a lot you have to kind of pull into that conversation that's not just focused on revenue, right? Like I don't know, because to me, like sustainability is similar, because like I would really like to see sustainability prioritized, but with a lot of this other stuff in mind, right? So like, because it all needs to kind of function together, which I think what I'm hearing myself saying is strategic planning is maybe my number one thing. With the idea
That's what
that
I'm hearing. you
that
say.
then like some of this stuff kind of gets naturally prioritized like as part of that strategic plan.
Inside of.
Ditto.
Mhm.
That's where
Yeah,
I am.
I agree.
But I think the
strategic
Charter
plan
Review
on top.
Commission is also.
Also,
important.
yes.
Yeah, and again, we're not saying just one thing.
Right.
Right.
Some are more time sensitive, like some of these things have budgets for this fiscal year, so we need to move on those so we know how to spend those dollars in this fiscal year.
I do think strategic planning would allow us like to itemize or to determine the routes that we want to take and whether we need subcommittees and everything. So strategic plan is kind of broad, right? But I think a lot of those things on that list will fall under strategic planning, or at least allow us, hey, does this need a separate work session or a separate subcommittee or whatnot?
It's a structure
Yeah.
for us to follow.
Yeah, it kind of like gives us the ability to throw everything at the wall and see exactly what's going to stick for right now and figure out where we want to go, like what's important. So I kind of agree with you, Sarah. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Now, I will say this, I think you can get bogged down in strategic
That's right,
planning
for sure.
for, you know, months on end without really getting anywhere.
Exactly.
So I'm happy to have that conversation, but I also don't want to say we're going to develop a 5-year strategic plan within the next 2 months, because I just don't think it's gonna be possible.
And then have things bogged down
Yeah.
because we're not focused on
Yeah,
this way big.
Yeah, well, and keep in mind, we do have some groundwork for the strategic plan already.
Yes.
And unfortunately, everyone but, Emily unfortunately wasn't here, but I think, some feedback from staff, some other things. Would you like to comment at all on this?
I'm dying to.
Sorry, I took so long to ask.
The conversation is great. I'm enjoying listening to it. I may later go back to the work session discussion if we can. And for me, that better? Thank you. A lot of this fits into the work session discussions. So myself and staff, of course, will work on anything that the council asks in the direction, but the timeframes and having a realistic calendar is going to be important. And I appreciate, thank you, Councilwoman Alexander, for sharing the revenue discussion, because I think in order to do most of these things, we've got to have the revenue discussion. And so really knowing what that looks like and paring down the strategic planning as well. Are we really talking strategic planning for council's goals? We also need to talk about organizational, internal strategic planning. And then there's the community. So where does that land? And so I really, just as council talks, I'm trying to parse all of that out. And how many of those things dovetail? You know, when I talk here, you all say, I won't say who shall never be mentioned. The site planning for that, was it old
Webster North.
You got my Voldemort joke. Thank you.
I did too.
Excellent. And Laura did not. Sorry, Mayor. And so, you know, what do we mean by housing? What is the housing discussion? You know, where are we going with that? What does it mean to council? What does it mean to community? And what is staff's role in it? Will we be having those community engagement sessions and other outreach opportunities? So again, I will continue asking questions as we have to narrow the focus so we can attain some of these goals this year.
And that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned housing. I mean, the first work session conversation is that definition and what does the discussion look like? And for some of those, the site planning as well. What does the discussion look like? You know, some of us have a preference to go to the property owners first and say, all right, how can we be partners rather than adversaries in this? So you're right. These are, again, by definition, these are broad topics. So what I hear so far is strategic planning, charter review, and then also boards and commissions, simply because it's underway already. And then the strategic planning process will set the table for everything else. Is that a fair summary of the conversation we've had so far, or what am I missing? Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor and members, just to give you insight, we talked briefly about fiscal policies in the budget conversation, 2 points about revenue. Not just a revenue conversation, generation of revenue, but fiscal policy in terms of sustainability. So looking beyond the general fund, even to how do we capitalize our assets? Right? I mean, the SIP plan, 5-year capital improvement plan, is not a true capital asset. That doesn't count for the 20 years out. How are we starting to build the reserves to pay for the big things that are going to be redone? When we build a new aquatic center, immediately day one, we should start the plan on how we're going to build the next aquatic center and fix all the pieces of infrastructure in that process. So that takes some policy work from you all. We put that on your calendar in September to start those conversations about those policies that we don't have in place, or some of them that have been practiced, but not policies of the city that have come.
All right, so one more thing on the list. So can we leave this in our next schedule? So for our next work session, to begin to discuss the parameters of strategic planning?
We absolutely can. Just having some additional thoughts as I listen to the discussion. Would also like more direction on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, we have our reports. We had wonderful, work that's previously been done, but we need to revisit that. And what does it mean to council in terms of how we move forward? Just as a philosophy, DEI could be spread across every single one of these topics.
Right.
How do we make sure DEI is incorporated as we move forward, setting policy and approaching community with each of these issues? So I'd like to dig more into that. But yes, staff, I will work on creating some more of a strategic planning framework, and perhaps we can talk more about a calendar.
Okay. Can we, go ahead, Emily. You look like you're about to say
Just
something.
nodding.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I was just anticipating. So can we pause for a minute and talk about the Charter Review Commission? The Boards and Commissions Subcommittee has been meeting. You had our notes in your packet. In terms of revising the board and commission packet, one of the things we we're working on is what is the application for the Charter Review Commission look like? And we realized we can't actually come up with an application and get it out there until we answer some very basic questions. The first of those is about timeline. Because we're going to have to tell people who are applying what to expect in terms of how long they're going to be committed to this. And so in the subcommittee, at least, we looked at having anything that they recommend on the April 2024 election. To work backwards from that, that would probably, once we do applications, probably give them about a year to work. Thoughts?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right, moving on then.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me too.
Second question we had, are there particular backgrounds or skills that we want to have on that commission that we need to ask about in the application process?
I think you'd want a breadth of skills and backgrounds. And ages. And all other sorts of demographic.
And I think that's up to us in the selection
Right.
process, but
Right.
are there things that, are there expertise that we think would be beneficial? And the answer can be no. I don't, I'm not, it was a question that came up in our discussion.
Well, the concept actually working as a team is very important on that commission. You know, because I'm sure everybody gonna have their thoughts and ideas on what it should be and how it should change, but if the majority say this is it, this is what they present to council. And that's the decision and they live with it. There are some that just don't wanna, I don't like it, so I'm not gonna support it. You don't want that to get back out into the community. So that team concept is important.
But isn't it gonna depend upon the board and commission? I mean, some things do require.
We're talking just about the Charter Review Commission right now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What about residency? Do we have, did you guys have a discussion about?
I'm
how
pretty
long you need-
sure, oh, not at the length of time, no.
Correct, yeah.
Was there a resident?
Does that matter? How long? Or is
Would
it
they
just
need
that
to
they're
be-
here
I'm-
Currently a member and that's it.
Apologize, Madam Mayor. Would they need to be residents or could they be a business owner, for example?
Well, the ordinance, the charter doesn't speak to it, but the ordinance may. So let me look at that.
Okay, while he's looking, so it sounds to me though, like skill wise, we just are looking for breadth and
I don't know that we want it like codified, I guess. Like, I think hopefully we'll have some better ideas. We start to see who's applying. I know you're gonna get to this, but I like the idea of kind of giving a baseline amount of information out to people so that they're kind of starting from the same place, learning about how the city's structured.
okay.
But I
I
do,
think we can.
I don't know, like, I think if we're saying we want one lawyer, one architect, like, I think we maybe might miss out on some other types of expertise.
So maybe the question on the application form is just open-ended and to please list any experience and expertise that would be a benefit to that commission.
Which is what we've already put on revised application.
Right,
So,
just to make sure that we
Yeah.
know what they have and then we can pick and choose during the
And
selection
we need to
process.
give great consideration that, because I've been a resident of Webster Hill for 35 years, it's not necessarily the end all. They need to have something to add or contribute to that commission.
Neil's gonna get back to two of us on the requirement itself.
I can pull it up if you want, Madam Mayor.
I think Neil's working. on it.
Okay.
And yeah, it's section 4.4 and it says don't go past it.
It says electors.
It says electors.
Mm-hmm.
He beat you to
Yeah,
it.
so it's got to be a resident. So membership, there should be a charter review advisory board. It shall consist of 9 electors of the city appointed by the council.
Okay.
Members shall serve until removed or discharged by council. The board shall elect its own chairman and vice chairman for such terms as the board may determine. The board may adopt from time to time such rules and regulations as it may deem necessary to carry out its duties.
Okay, thank you. A couple other things that came up in this, should we require diversity, equity, inclusion training for those members who are seated on the commission?
Yes.
Or should we ask if they've had any?
Neither.
Okay.
It is
Right,
weird.
that's, yeah. And the reason I believe you shouldn't do either is because you don't want to influence the board. I would hope that we would have a diverse board where some have had DEI and some have not had DEI.
What's the benefit of not having the training?
Well, because there's a lot of people in the community that don't have DEI training. So if you want to
Right,
be
but maybe they don't
represented.
serve on the board.
Sure, but I think that you have to represent the community. You have to have, as Charter Review Commission, I think has to be representative of the community at large.
I don't disagree with that, but I still think you can provide training.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I'm sorry, I cut you off, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't think that, I'm all for DEI training. I just think it won't add much value to this Charter Review Advisory Commission because their scope is limited to the current charter and whether there should be amendments made.
But as they are reviewing what amendments to be made, they should have a DEI perspective in mind. Is it equitable for all citizens? Is it really taking in all of those DEI attributes?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see why we wouldn't.
But do you see, I mean, I guess maybe this is just the way my mind works, but by forcing them to look at DEI, aren't we influencing the Charter Review Commission automatically? That's our job when the recommendations come to us to determine the DEI aspect of it. But if we're forcing them or compelling them, that seems to me to be influencing the Charter Review Commission.
I think it's okay to ask the question, but I don't know if it's a requirement. I would think maybe on DEI commission or someone specifically working with DEI, they would need to have the training. I understand your point of view. I think it's okay to ask.
Sure.
And I think it's okay for us to have a discussion when the time comes with the candidates about that.
I think it's okay to offer DEI training to those individuals.
Yeah. But do you think?
I'd like to
Let's-
require
let's
it, like,
put-
I'm
Let's
still-
put that on hold because right now we just need to worry about, we got to start putting applications out. And this part of this was about the application. I didn't necessarily write it there. One other thing that came up was a need for informational sessions, just sort of here are the basics of what a charter commission does. Here's a basic of a strong city manager, weak mayor system like we have. Does anybody have any objection of us putting that together? I think between Dr. Peoples, our city attorney, and myself, we could put something together pretty easily and just offer that before application, but the application deadline, so people understand exactly what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And then I'm going to skip the G on this. You guys don't have it in front of you, I don't think, which is about an informational manual. And maybe we as a commission, as a subcommittee, will just make a recommendation on that. Our subcommittee is meeting on Monday. So we will, in our next work session, bring back to you the application for the boards, for the Charter Review Commission, so that we can actually start scheduling some of these things. Because if we want to give them a year, we have to select this commission by probably September, October. We okay with the timing there? Does that timing make sense to you, Katie?
Yes.
All right. We have to, does anybody else have anything about priorities or Charter Review Commission before we move on to assigning boards and commissions assignments? I know this is a lot of organizational discussion, which is not all that interesting necessarily, but very, very necessary. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. All right, let me find my right memo. Okay, Andrew Clapper and Dan Meehan both have applied for the Parks and Recreation Commission. We have 2 vacancies there. Shall we appoint them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Angela Austin has applied to the Library Board.
Yes.
David Smith for the Old Webster Special Business District.
Yes.
Yes.
Frances Barbieri is the current chair of the Personnel Board. She's seeking reappointment. She served 2 terms and wishes to be reappointed. One of the things to remember about the Personnel Board, until the last year, I don't even know when it's met. So the two.
In my
being-
tenure, it
Yeah,
only,
so being on there for 2 terms meant 2 blank terms for quite a while. Do we wish to reappoint her?
Yes.
Yes.
Crossroads Special Business District Commission. Heidi Butts Wygand, who's the current chair of the commission. She's served since November of 2011, but wants to be reappointed.
She was just recently elected chair. And she's been on that commission obviously a long
Yeah.
time, but she's very active and very, at least she comes.
And I think this is one of those commissions that we are never full or almost never full. Yeah. Shall we and then Joshua Tonys has served since 2014. He wishes to be considered for reappointment.
Another active member.
Another active. All right, so those 2 are we reappointing?
Yes.
Okay, I think that covers all of them, if I am correct. Okay. I believe that brings our work session to a close unless someone has another work session issue. So why don't we take like 3 minutes and then we'll start our regular meeting.
Can we just say that it's really great to see so many new people applying to boards and
Right. Very gently. Oh, let's wait for, sorry.
what I see.
Don't mean to rush you all.
Did we get Wi-Fi? When? Whenever the slow mo from China gets the parts here, so.
All right, shall we call this meeting to order? Thank you all of those who have joined
Hard
us,
to do.
all of you who have joined us today, both in person on Zoom. We will have a period, at least for a little while, still called remarks of visitors. If you'd like to make a public comment, we ask that you fill out a speaker's card, which are on the table over there. If you are on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, you then will raise your hand, use the raise your hand function, and when we get to the public comment period, or remarks of visitors period, excuse me, we will call on you to speak at that time. You have 3 minutes to speak. And I think pretty much that covers our ground rules here. Yeah, 3 minutes in order to complete our agenda in a reasonable time. So we're going to start today with the roll call as usual.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss. Here. Councilmember Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Alexander.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
here.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd. Here.
All right, we are happy to have with us today, Mr. Tom Cooper from the library, Webster Groves Public Library, who will present the annual library budget to us. Welcome.
Thank you. All right, Madam Mayor, esteemed council members, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here tonight to present the operating budget for Webster Groves Public Library for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. This budget was passed just at the last board meeting. And I know as interesting as it is to hear me talk about numbers, I'll try to keep this brief. I have with me tonight Mr. Ed Shaw. He's a trustee of the library board and was recently reelected as our treasurer. So he's here to for moral support. Thank you, Ed. This is a fairly typical budget. There's nothing really groundbreaking or changing in it. And there's a few reasons for that. If you start at the top on page 1, you all have a copy of this, right? So the payroll is pretty standard. I did try to roll some raises into the salaried full-time people. So that goes up a little bit. You may notice that hourly, the part-time people has gone down from what I budgeted last year. As soon as I talked to the full-time staff last year and I said, you know, if we would all take more desk shifts and work a little harder, we could make more money. And that means using fewer part-time hours. And that's what's reflected in that budget. Let's hope it works. So all the rest of the things in that category are determined by those salaries. You know, health insurance and pension and everything like that. The interesting category for most people is the next category of materials. I'm not changing much in that category either. Books is still about 85,000. Juvenile books is 16,000. One of the interesting categories is adult audio. You may notice that I budgeted 35,000 last year and only spent 25. That's because the MLC, the Municipal Library Consortium, got great big grants from the state to buy ebooks and audiobooks and things like that. We could have spent more of our own money, but we spent more of the state's money last year. But we will still be spending 28,000 this year because audiobooks is just about the fastest growing medium in libraries. It's even faster than ebooks. And unfortunately, they cost 3 times as much as ebooks. So you stop listening, you start reading. But no, people like them. I like them. I have a long commute to work and I'm always listening to an audiobook. Everything else is pretty standard, the juvenile and videos and everything. You know, we don't circulate as many videos as we used to, nor we are hardly spending more than like 500 a year on compact discs. 10 years ago, we had a lot of music like that, but young people especially just streaming all their music now. So we don't spend much money on that stuff. That's the materials category. The next few things, interlibrary loan, photocopy, are pretty much fixed costs. You go to the second page, is utilities, and I'm sure that I will go to my deathbed never getting the utilities right. It just, you have a cold winter and you spend more on gas, and you have a hot summer and you spend more on electricity for air conditioning. It just goes up and down. And, that's one of the things the boards are, well, how come you only spent this much on electricity last year? And I said, you do it, you get it right. As long as the category works out right, which is about 46,000, I'm fine. We'll just adjust late in the fiscal year to keep the auditors happy. In the total operations category, one of the interesting things, if you may notice this, is building and grounds. That's the money spent to keep up the grounds, repair the building and things like that. I budgeted 53 last year and we spent 109,000. That's because we had big emergencies last year. We had roof problems. The biggest problem was floods in the basement. And you may remember, we rebuilt the library between 2010 and 2012. There was one small section of the basement that we did not rebuild, and that bit the dust. We had flood after flood last fall, and we finally had to have them come in and jackhammer up the whole thing, replace all those pipes out into the ground. That was a huge project. The insurance covered the damage that happened from the floods, but replacing everything was on our dime. So that's why we had that money. We put that. And the interesting thing is that, as Mr. Shaw will remind the board again and again, that's why we have reserves to handle things like that. Unfortunately, all that money was in reserves. Under automation and equipment and such, you may notice that I budgeted 2,000 last year and it says we spent over 12,000. That's because we had a state grant. Again, it's a state grant I applied for to buy 13 new computers for the children's room and for the adult room. That money hasn't been given back to us yet. The way our fiscal year doesn't work well with the state's fiscal year. I just this week filed the final report for that grant. And so probably July or August, I'll get the check for that. So it won't come back to us in this fiscal year. So it doesn't look like it balances, but it does. And the final category there is miscellaneous. Professional services is what we pay our auditor and our attorneys and our bookkeeper and people like that. Again, a fairly fixed cost. Insurance keeps going up on us. I'm sure it does for the city too. It's just they keep raising costs. And conferences and meetings, it's still just $1,000. For some reason, nobody on my staff likes to go to conferences and meetings, which is fine with me. I don't think we need to be paying for too many people's hotel rooms and meals and stuff so they can hear sales pitches from the same vendors who call us at the library anyway. So. The big category in here that really does get spent down there, the last one, special events, juvenile, that's $12,000. That's the money for summer reading club. And all of that always gets spent. A lot of that comes from the Friends of the Library. They always give us a big infusion of cash for summer reading club. And that's that budget there. The third page is the income. Taxes, I didn't give any increase this year for taxes over last year. I just don't know. It's been uncertain times and I really can't tell. You know, technically, if we've got high inflation, we should be able to raise our levy because that's what Hancock Amendment allows us to do. But we'll see how the paperwork works out in August and what we end up with there. Counter receipts, there's another interesting one right now because that's 20,000. That includes largely, that's library fines. But I think it was last year, I think Councilmember Franklin asked me, are we fine free yet? Well, we weren't, because when we started talking about it in the summer of, or in the spring of 2020, we were just getting into the pandemic and the board said, it's not a good time to give up a source of income voluntarily. Well, now we're past the pandemic more or less. And so we're talking about it again. I just today rounded up a bunch of information on different libraries that have gone fine free, what have been their experience and things like that. So the board seems very much interested in talking about that. So that 20,000 may be slashed, but I think we're doing all right anyway. State aid, again, the state had more money last year than we thought they were going to. And so we got good aid from the state. Copies, that's a fairly fixed thing. Final category there is passports. And that's just been, I won't say a cash cow, but it's been a win-win for us. You know, we make a lot of money. We get $35 for every passport that we process. And people like coming to the library to get their passport application done. Especially if you're a family with 2 or 3 kids and you got to get your passports, so much better to sit at a table in the library and do it than stand at that counter at the post office. So, you know, it's been, as I say, a win-win for everybody. We make money and customers get good service on that. 450,000, that's 9 cents of our levy is dedicated to retiring our bonds, and that money can only go to the bonds. So that's pulled right out for a total revenue of 1.6 million. But of that, only 1.178 about is set aside for our operating costs. Just, we will finish this fiscal year with a slight reserve. We didn't spend everything that we had set aside, and our reserves are still strong, about 1.5 years worth of money in our reserves. So that's been doing pretty well for us. Our budgets have been running pretty good. I will say just a few notes about the library in general right now. Summer Reading Club has kicked off real well. Lots of moms and kids coming in. That's been nice to see. At the last board meeting, one of the trustees asked me to look at the circulation figures. It seems like I've been seeing really rapidly increasing circulation figures. So we're getting back to pre-pandemic circulation. It's really going up, and that's nice to see. We've done several programs in the library and things like art receptions. When we put up a new art gallery thing or art exhibit in our gallery that used to attract 15 or 20 people, we get 70 people coming in. People just want to do something. So it's been pretty nice. And I will add too, that at a meeting a couple months ago, the board passed a resolution which officially accepted the Library Bill of Rights and the Freedom to Read statement. These are things that are seminal documents of the American Library Association that basically says everybody's got to read everybody's got the right to read whatever they want to read, and nobody can tell them they can't read that. And, in so many words and eloquent language and all. And we never officially adopted it. So we did adopt all of those statements at a board meeting a few months ago. And that's nice to know. That is about what I have to tell you.
Any questions?
How has staffing been for you guys with COVID and everything? Have you guys had to increase your salaries, especially for your hourly wage employees?
I would not say that it's as a result of COVID. In the past couple of years, I've been trying to work salaries up higher because I lose sleep at night thinking that any day now we're going to get hit with a $15 an hour minimum wage. And we're not that close to that. I keep trying to get closer and closer to it so that if it does come, we can afford it. So, we keep working towards that. As far as COVID, I hear the stories and I have had no problem staffing. We've got a position open right now, and I just posted it at the Missouri Library Association job lines. We'll see how that goes. So anybody want to be a youth service provider at the library, let me know.
And has the library returned to normal hours, like pre-COVID hours?
Yeah, we did that pretty long ago. Yeah. Webster Groves Public Library, and I tell you this again and again, was open more days, more hours, more often than any other library in St. Louis County. You know, kept our doors closed less than any other library. Our closest competitor was University City Public Library, but they kept having people get sick and kept closing up again. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your hard work.
you're welcome. It was nice to do that. And on one personal note, I'd like to add, if there aren't any more questions, this is the last time that I will address this august assembly.
I thought we talked about.
You thought you talked him out of it, huh?
It's not that close. It's March of 23. It'll be a week after my 67th birthday and I'm retiring. So
You realize they passed an ordinance which prohibited that, right?
you realize I'm a librarian, we can access all that stuff.
Well, thank
Well, I
you.
always like hearing your highlights of the year, so.
Yeah.
we miss the presentation.
Well, and it's been great to have good council members as our liaisons. You know, I've always gotten good support from them and, you know, from Jeannie Kirkton through Karen, through everybody. It's just been great to work with the library. So.
Well, thank you. It is definitely a huge asset to our community, the library is. So
Thank you.
we appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
All right, we have made our way to the remarks of visitors. And Mr. Bach, you are up first.
Dave Buck, 144 South Elm. Two quick things. First of all, relative to strategic planning, the only point I want to make, I lived in Webster Groves for 20 years, and every city council has said, we're going to do, they've given lip service to strategic planning, and nothing's ever happened in 20 years. And secondly, you don't even have a plan right now. I mean, you know, it's a lot of work. In fact, you look at the Kirkwood, I'm trying to hold it up, but you know, they developed a 19-page, very comprehensive strategic plan. It takes a lot of work and a lot of thinking. So don't think it's going to be a lay down hand in 1 3-hour meeting. I mean, takes a lot of work. Second thing is that I'm blessed with 6 kids, 8 grandkids. And one of my favorite documents is 101 ways to praise a child. Like, you're really awesome, or you're fantastic, or you're beautiful. Okay. You know, when you praise a kid, self-esteem and excitement goes up. And the question is, well, if it works for kids, why don't we do more of that ourselves? And I was thinking about all of city staff and city council and the whole budget thing that you've gone through. And, you know, I'm out there in the cheap seats, you know, looking in, but I appreciate and seeing the work and the deliberations and the reflection and the discussion that you all have had on a very, very difficult budget year. This may have been the toughest budget year that I've seen in my 20 years here. And I think that city council, I think all of city staff, Scott, Dale, fire department, public works, everybody deserves to be praised. And so all I want to do is simply to say that I'm really proud of all of you, and I'm proud to be a member of the city because you have really done a terrific job. I'm really glad that you are our leaders, and I will follow you anywhere. Okay, so there you go.
Remember you said that, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Right, thank you. We do have, I think, one hand that is raised.
Yes, Withers, go ahead. You'll have to unmute.
Hello, members of the council. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, excellent. My name is Riley Withers. I've been a Webster Grove. I've had the privilege of being a Webster Grove city resident for approximately 11 years now, and I've only recently started kind of paying attention to the inner workings of what's going on within the city. Over the last election cycle, And then the one previous to that, I've noticed budget recommendations and allocations have been a big part, as they should be, for key talking points. And one of my biggest concerns, I guess, that I have as a city resident is the misappropriation of funds. And one that I see, I guess, routinely pop up is some of the spending by Dr. Peoples. I'm not going to pretend that I know or that I presume to know the inner workings of your office. I know you have a hard job. And I know some of the history kind of where you come from and the challenges that you have had to overcome. But I want to know, is that an issue that will be addressed, in the coming years with all of the current budget cuts and employees leaving the city? Like the gentleman who just spoke about the library, he's been having some issues trying to get salaries to come up above $15 an hour. And then the one thing that I continually circle back to is, I guess, like over $1 million being spent on city hall decor or upgrades that really have no viable or feasible or tangible point to it other than to make the area look nice. I mean, can't certain funds, and I'm only using that as a reference point, can't certain funds be diverted elsewhere so that not only the city residents but also the city workers benefit from those misappropriations of funds? And I'll take my comment off so others can answer. Thank you.
So, Mr. Withers, generally, we do not respond to public comments. That's just the way the meetings are set up. I don't have a phone number or a way to contact you because we don't have a speaker's card. But if you will reach out to me, I'm happy to meet with you and have an extended conversation about some of your concerns.
Certainly. And Dr. Peoples, that's the one thing that continually is brought to my attention, and I'm only using that as my talking point now. But like I said, I know you have a difficult job.
So this is actually the Mayor Arnold speaking. I don't know if you knew that, but I would be happy to meet with you and talk to you about this and how we as a council supervise staff and things like that as well. So please just reach out to me. You can email me at mayor@webstergrovesmo.gov. That's right. mayor@webstergrovesmo.gov.
Contact info.
All right. I look forward to hearing
So
from you.
I appreciate.
Sorry about that. Okay, are there any other hands that are up that we are aware of?
None.
Okay, does anyone have any new business? All right, check that one off. Then, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, would you call for the third reading of Bill 9186, please?
The third.
Yes, please.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9186 and call for its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9186, third reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 53, the zoning code, by permitting the tract of land located at 1523, 131, and 133 Euclid Avenue, the current zoning of A4 7,500 square foot residence district, to be developed under a planned environmental unit procedure for the purpose of construction of 6 single-family dwelling units, and approving a preliminary development plan on an approximately 1.09 acre tract of land and matters related thereto.
Is there any discussion?
I would like to just commend staff, the applicant, and the community that participated in this process. I was at the planning commission meetings. We had over 3 of those. And I understand there were several in the community. And from what I hear, what I've heard, and I can see, is that everybody was very responsive and collaborated with each other. And I think the solution has turned out so far that we'll be voting on tonight is going to be beneficial to community.
Thank you. Second that. All right, let's have the vote then.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander. Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. All right, Councilwoman Alexander, would you call for the third reading of Bill number 9187, please?
Yes, I would like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9187 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9187, third reading. An ordinance defining the pay grades of the classified and unclassified service of the city of Webster Groves, fixing the compensation for employees in said classifications, and repealing ordinance 9151, 9152, and 9174.
Is there any discussion? All right, let's have the vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander. Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right, Councilmember Smith, I believe that you would like to remove something from the consent agenda.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to.
Have the new business first.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, I skipped one. Sorry about that. Oh,
It's an
really?
important one.
You have to take back everything nice you said. I like how you all jumped immediately.
Every opportunity.
Councilmember Franklin, would you like to address the resolution?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the adoption of resolution number 2022-20.
Is there a second?
Second.
Resolution 2022-20, adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2023.
Is there discussion? I'm just going to take a moment to thank our staff for the really hard detail work that they have done in creating this budget, especially our department of directors, especially Mr. Peterson, Dr. Peoples. I've been referring to this as a challenging budget year, which obviously it has been, but focusing on as a problem to solve is somewhat disguises, how difficult many of the decisions were, especially those decisions that included staff reductions. And I do just want to reinforce that I think everyone up here took that very seriously, and we understand that that's a real human impact that is involved there. But we also have a commitment to this community to make sure we both address the service needs of the day and plan for those and invest in our community for tomorrow. So we have to bring this budget back into balance. I think we're down the road. I wanted to thank staff, but I also want to thank all of you on the council for putting in all the time that you have in addressing this budget cycle. So thank you for that. All right, with that, I think we're ready to vote.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yeah.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
All right, now I think it's safe to say, Councilmember Smith, I believe you had something to remove.
Yes, I'd like to remove resolution 2022-22 for out of the consent agenda. I believe this document is very important to the budget in itself. It gives a guideline to our residents on where the city and the city council is going to, in the direction we're going to do to eliminate our deficit. So I'd just like to make it a separate item that we vote on.
I would also, I have no opposition to that, Emerson. I'm perfectly fine with that. I would like to remove 2022-21 as well to discuss.
Okay.
2021.
Oh, it's not.
All right, so let's go first with the resolution 2022-22. Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Does anyone else have any comments on that resolution? All right, let's go ahead and vote, please.
Just somebody want to make it.
Oh, yeah, we have to actually make. a
Yeah,
motion.
well, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of resolution 2022-22
Second.
and its subsequent adoption.
Race. Second.
All right, I'll get there eventually.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yeah, yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
All right then, Councilmember Franklin has asked for us to consider resolution 2022-21 separately.
I just had a quick question in regards to, it says the truck is currently in production. Are we building a new truck?
Council member, I'll take that one and happy to answer it. Assistant Chief Banger is here as well. We are not building a new truck. This is a demo truck as discussed in our council deliberations during the budget. So it is not being built for us. It's being built for the demo, and after its time in demo, which will be early in 2023, it'll be delivered to us in February. So we are not incurring any custom build charge for this truck.
So then we're not gonna have this truck until 2023?
February of 2023, which is about the earliest we are going to be able to get a demo anyways. Most of the demos out right now are spoken for under the same process.
I thought there was an emergency that we needed a truck, so we're gonna wait 9 months? I'm not questioning you, I'm just questioning what was told to us.
There is a maintenance cost that has been brought up from the fire department, and it was a serious maintenance cost that the truck continues to experience along the way. It is operable now, if I'm correct, Assistant Chief, and in service, so. But again, it could break tomorrow.
Assistant Chief Painter, if you wouldn't mind coming up. So Councilman Franklin, that is an excellent question, and I have had similar questions to it. So unfortunately, a fire truck, and it's a great question, is not something that can just be delivered overnight, but you're right. So the council voted on this, granted the funds, which were quite a hardship, as you know, considering the budget situation. And we may still, in fact, incur maintenance fees on the fire truck that we're maintaining. So Chief Painter, I don't know if there's anything you'd want to add.
Basically, that was the earliest demo truck that we could get. The next one was like, maybe like 3 or 4 months later. This was probably the best deal we were going to get of all the demo trucks, and the quickest we could get one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know they spent a lot of time, did a lot of research, and met with like 5 different companies that sell trucks, and this was the best deal that they could get.
So is there a strategy in place in order that we decrease or limit our maintenance cost on the current truck?
When engine house number 2 is done, the ladder truck is going to move down there. So because will run about 800 less calls a year. So it won't run quite as much.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
That's the plan anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Did you want it actually removed for a
No,
separate
no.
vote, but this conversation is enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then is Council Member Bliss, would you call for the approval of consent agenda, please?
I would be happy to.
Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Mhm.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
All right, we have made several appointments to boards and commissions. Andrew Clapper and Dan Meehan have both been appointed to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Angela Austin to the Library Board. David Smith to the Old Webster Special Business District. Francis Barbieri has been reappointed to the Personnel Board. And Heidi Butts Wydand, as well as Joshua Tonys, have been reappointed to the Crossroads Special Business District Commission. I would like need a motion for is there any other business?
Well, we can get an updated list of what spots are open on different commissions.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
The gap is closing.
Yeah, I know.
That's good.
All right, and I believe that we need an executive closed session under
1 and 3.
1 and 3. Who would like to call for them?
That's Pam.
And would like to.
Sandra. Go. Practice makes perfect.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session related to number 1, privileged communications. Missouri statute 610.021, open friends, 1 close friends. And item 3, personnel, Missouri statute 610.021, open parentheses 3, close parentheses.
Second.
There was a second. All right.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander, Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. That means we will now move into our closed session.